Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, and today we have with us another special guest, and she goes by the name of Valerie Davis. So who is Valerie Davis? She is a mom, outdoors woman, and family woman that happens to be a medical sales professional, and she works in the space of augmented reality in orthopedics. Need I say more? I know your ears have been piqued. I know you're all listening to this and saying, you know what? I want to know more about that augmented reality in orthopedics and how this woman is making these things happen. So this is going to be a treat to listen to. It's so nice to bring cutting edge technology to the forefront and share it with you all. So tune in, enjoy the episode, and as always, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey Valerie, how are we doing today?
I'm good. How about you?
I am fantastic. No complaints. Why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
All right. Well, my name is Valerie Davis. Currently, I'm working in the orthopedic space with a company called Microport. I'm working on the technology integration side. So I'm working with any augmented reality, robotic, any technology integration that we have with joint replacements. It's been a passion of mine for a long time.
All right. So you can't say augmented reality, joint replacement, virtual anything, and not probably have piqued everyone's ears right now that's listening. Can you tell us what that space actually means and kind of address it from someone that doesn't even know the industry, right? Because they hear about things. Oh, I want to be a robotics medical device rep, or I want to work with those goggles. To give us the reality here, what's the actual role and what's happening?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and it's evolving so quickly that, it's become such a standard in everything we do now, both in, video games and technology for my kids in their school to all the way up to surgery and training and remote telepresence options for people wanting to do more. So I think one of the biggest things to learn is augmented reality is something that's augmenting the current reality that you're seeing, right? So the reality that you're actually in, you're not off in some cartoon world where you're not in the live space that's in front of you. So you're still
Sure.
able to see. That's the standard is a Microsoft HoloLens. There's a lot of different lenses out there that are allowing immersive touch into the world that you're currently seeing. So if somebody's wearing a goggle, you can still see the table, you can still interact with everything with a screen, much like your phone or your, a TV superimposed over that live world. Sure. And then virtual reality, one of the standards, to drop a name, is OSO VR, right? Everybody's heard of OSO VR. That's in the medical device space currently. They're using an off-the-shelf model of the Oculus. It's now rebranded as the whatever Facebook has rebranded it as. I feel Meta. The Meta. Yeah. So the goggles, they're using that piece to immerse you into a world that is a digitized, very realistic, fake world. So you're able to immerse yourself into training technology or real life situations inside a world that exists in a goggle where you're not interacting with the world around you.
Got it. And in your position, you're dealing with both or just augmented reality?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So we're doing both. We are integrating augmented reality with live surgical cases. We do have training opportunities with our virtual reality, and then robotics, right? So the good old fashioned, it feels now, even though it was new not too long ago, robotics, where you have a physical robot that's interacting with the surgical space.
All right. So then let's talk about the different sales reps in these spaces. For those that are listening that either want to transition to something like this, or, they're not even in the industry and they want to get into medical sales and they've always thought they've been drawn to robotics. So there's a sales rep that sells the actual device, the robot itself, and are there sales reps that sell the virtual equipment like the goggles and things like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's a lot of different spaces and ways to get into this world. There are capital reps. Those are people that historically would have sold hospitals or sold surgery centers the device itself. So a robot,
True.
like a big robot, and whatever disposables that go along with it. So items that might be used on a one-off case-by-case basis. Now, currently, as it's evolved, I feel like you're starting to see some overlap between people who maybe are doing the with companies who have both, that have a robotic piece or a capital expenditure piece and say a joint replacement, so the metal that goes into the patient. There's starting to be some overlap there, but they're still standalone a bit. And then once you get into the augmented reality and the virtual reality space, it starts to become a software based. So what happens is a company who maybe customizes solutions. So say we'll use OSO VR because our current company uses OSO VR. We contact them or they contact us. We decide that this is a system we would like to use to either train our reps, train our surgeons, use as a sales tool to demonstrate our procedures. They sell the product to us, and then our team, our clinical team, works with their software team and their engineering team to develop the solution in tandem. And then we own the product and brand it as if it's ours. So there's a couple of different ways. And then in terms of the augmented reality and different solutions that are out there, bigger companies might be either purchasing smaller companies that have already developed augmented reality solutions, or smaller companies are working as distributors for companies that already have products that exist. So there's a lot of different avenues to work with either a small company or a big company that can incorporate solutions into surgery and into day-to-day operations.
Got it. And from your position, you're managing all of these different relationships.
Yeah, so I'm working with integration of all of these technologies that we're using into the field. So working with our distributors, we work with the distributor network, unlike some of the bigger companies that have a maybe direct to corporation set of reps that are selling. We work with multiple distributorships that have different things in their bag that they're carrying on a day-to-day basis in different specialties. So I work with them and with our internal team, being fluent in all of the technology aspects that we have in our bag.
Wow. Wow. So, one thing I always like to ask people in your position, you were a rep once, and now you're in a leadership position, and you're managing reps, you're managing different departments within the company that are helping these reps. I mean, you're managing everything that has to happen between the account and the rep and all the in between. What would you say is the biggest difference as far as being a performer? Think back to when you were a rep and you were performing. Think to now and what performance looks like, and what's the biggest shift that you had to really take on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like I've been doing this a while. I got in obviously pretty early with Mako prior to the Stryker acquisition, and back then it was just about mastering what the procedure was and covering that to the best of your ability, right? So and that scaled as you worked with either busier surgeons or busier areas, or if you know what your strengths were as a rep, but you were responsible for your performance, right? So you're just like, okay, if I have my day organized and my act together, just so I don't cuss on your show. But if I have my act together, then that's what I'm responsible for, is my day-to-day going well. Once you start to scale up and get a bigger footprint that you're managing or responsible for, you start to have to see the bigger picture, and like everybody's day needs to be together, or helping on a bigger scale, helping more surgeons, more reps, more day-to-day, more geography, and making sure that those day-to-day operations are going on a more, like, just on a bigger scale.
And would you say that, so when you were a performing rep and you saw a rep that maybe wasn't, as you so eloquently put, doesn't have their stuff together, I'm sure you had some feelings, and you had some thoughts on what to do differently and what have you. In your position now, has that changed?
No, it hasn't changed. There's certainly people just in general in life, we've all experienced the people who are just more driven, and the people who
Yeah.
maybe are just, doing the least amount possible. And that shows. I feel like in the over 10 years that I've been doing this, you definitely see, I feel like the people who work harder are the ones that are still here. You start to phase out people maybe, but on that, to that same token, on the other side of that coin is, as the pay starts to drop, maybe for the people who were the grinders of the previous world, they maybe are getting into other avenues because maybe they're getting paid more to do a little bit less finally. So it's a catch-22, I think, in this industry.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's go back because everybody wants to know. So, take us back to college. You were about to enter the business market or the working market. Tell us what did you study in college? How about that?
Yeah, so I was pre-med at Michigan State
Pre-med. Okay.
University. Yep. And I did a kinesiology emphasis with physiology, uh, just because I didn't want to major in biology and have to become a teacher or something like that. I didn't see myself doing that long term.
Sure.
In college, I actually worked in the strength and conditioning department. So I worked with them, training the football team, meathead in the gym. I've always come to the fitness and medical fork in my
Sure.
life and in my career,
All
um,
right.
which is obviously a precursor to orthopedics, which we've already alluded to. I work in currently. From there, out of college, I couldn't decide exactly what I wanted to do immediately. So, um, it was going to be do I go to PT school? Do I go to PA school? I needed to get some experience if I was going to go to PA school clinically. I didn't see myself going right into med school. I didn't see myself continuing to work in the college athletic scene from a strength and conditioning perspective. It was really fun and really engaging at the time, but I just didn't see myself long term in it.
Sure.
Everybody always asks you that. Do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, no, like not still doing this at the same
Right.
place. And so I actually took a little bit of a what most people would see as a blip in my resume, and
Okay.
I had been bartending through college, right? The actual
Right.
pays the bills job versus the, internship hours in the weight room and
Sure.
stuff like that. And somebody that I worked with, I used to actually house sit for her while she was down in the Caribbean doing business. And so I went down to St. Croix, the US Virgin Islands, and got licensed in real estate.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So got licensed in real estate and worked as an assistant in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Learned a lot. Learned absolutely a ton about finances. I grew up in Michigan, like not really an affluent area, and
Right.
did single parent family. Didn't really
Right.
learn about investing and that. And so it was actually really great for me to get immersed into that immediately.
Beautiful.
But from there, with a small island culture, the word got out really quickly that I used to work in fitness and
Mhm.
in medicine, and by then I was already an EMT, and so I got recruited out. The oil refinery down there actually needed EMTs that could work full time, and the
Oh,
way
wow.
the island worked is like you were either a government employee working as an EMT or you could work for this refinery. Like you really couldn't do both. You could do part-time, but they needed full-time people. And so I took a job as an EMT inside an oil refinery. And it was an on-land refinery. Everybody always asks me that, like if I was like on a rig, like out in the ocean. And it was an
Right.
on-land refinery. It was Hess oil combined with PDVSA. So
Okay.
but extremely long story short, I worked as an EMT for a long time. I got to do rescue, got to do high angle rescue, confined space
Yeah.
rescue, cutting
Yeah.
cars open, and all sorts of
Wow.
stuff. And it was
Yeah.
a really exciting,
I can only
fun,
imagine.
fun
Yeah.
way to do everything. Because while I was down there, like I got to race for the triathlon team and race in cycling, and so my combination of sports and medicine, just kind of kept going. So, but I came to my normal fitness medical fork and was like, okay, it's time for me to either go to PA school or do what my next step is. So that's where
And
yeah,
that's where medical sales came in.
not quite. So I got to give you one more step to understand how medical
Let's
sales
do
came
it.
in. So from there, I had traveled to Seattle for a really long time. So I only make big moves, right? So Michigan, St. Croix, Seattle. I had traveled there a lot. And so I decided that I want to go to the University of Washington PA school.
Okay.
Most people on this call, if you've researched PA school at all, you know that the cycle opens up in April Every year you have to take the test, you have to go through all of that. And so I moved in April and established residency, and actually got a job at an orthopedic practice just for my athletic training background and my all of that. I had experience, so I could do all the casting and the, orthopedic tech job. So I had a real job, relevant, gaining clinical paid hours to get into PA school while that next cycle came around and I established residency. So that was it. That was on the east side of Seattle. Worked there for a year, got to jump into surgery, got to learn a lot more about joint replacements, got to be the gatekeeper for the reps coming in to talk to my surgeons. It was a busy 13 surgeon practice at the time. And now it's like 22 surgeons, I think, in the same practice. So I was the gatekeeper for the reps, right? I became that, and my surgeon did not like reps coming into his practice.
Wow. So you got a whole flavor of reps.
Yeah. So I was the one that was like giving them my cell phone number, like, you need to text me before you show up here, because this is not going to happen. And so I got to experience that, coming in with DME, coming in with sports medicine, coming in with that. And then I observed surgeries with one of the joint replacement surgeons. And I was like, who is this person telling the surgeon step by step what to do? I want to do a little bit more about this role. And so I started talking to the reps. I started talking to the biomet reps. I started talking to the Pacific Medical, which was the big DME rep at the time. They had a lot of sports medicine and a lot of allografts and, stuff like that. And I started talking to all of them, and I didn't really find the right fit right away, because they're like, sure, you can be a DME rep. You can start here. And I'm like, I think I'm a little past like bringing ankle braces to the clinics. And then enter Mako Surgical. One of the surgeons at my practice started doing Mako cases. He actually had to commute into Seattle to do it, because they were the only hospital that had a robot at the time. And he was like, why don't you check this out? You should your clinical experience lines up with it. I know they're hiring, and go from there. And that was how I got my first job with Mako Surgical.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
And I escalated quickly, because at the time I think they were looking for people that could sell the robot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so those people aren't necessarily the right fit clinically to be in the OR and to help people learn about, taking people through a range of motion and stressing the joints and really balancing only partial knees at the time, and then eventually hip, and then total knee. So
got it. How long ago was this Mako?
Yeah, so that was December of 2011.
Wow.
So so January 2012 is when I started with that. So it was a long time ago.
11 years ago. Wow. Yeah. So so much has happened the last 2 years. But give us your take on how challenging it is to get into this industry now from 11 years ago to what you see today.
Yeah, I mean, 11 years ago, it was, fortunately, I had access to a lot of people, right? The reps. And I feel like that part has stayed the same, maybe even more. That's maybe the one piece that is easier in that, if you find fill in the blank company rep X, Y, or Z, and they seem personable on LinkedIn, they're probably going to take a message from you, right? Like you can probably reach out, and people, like, I encourage that. I'm sure, like, they're just about anybody I've seen on your podcast is like, message me, introduce me, let me know you heard from me. And I think that that's an important step that maybe didn't exist before. So that's one piece where I'll say that maybe it was harder back then. But then now I would say that maybe it's just known about more as a career path. Like, and it's been glamorized across certain aspects as a look at me, I'm in sales. Like, anybody can do it. And I'm not saying anybody can't, but there's it is competitive, and doing it like immediately out of college, that's not the right fit for just everybody, depending on the path and depending on the company and depending on where you had, both in credibility, street credibility with surgeons and with physicians and busy physicians that you're working with. And then fast forward that to even the last 2 years, just access to physicians and getting into offices. And gone are the days that you show up at a scrub sink. Not that that's ever been my style. I actually, because of my history and working in a practice and seeing what it looks like and seeing the, like, man, can you read the room? We are busy today. But like, it's that's never been my style, but gone are the days of just like taking the time to insert an awkward elevator pitch, right? And so I think that like that piece, it takes the right personality, and it takes knowing the right people, and it takes a lot of grit to stay motivated, and to understand that you need to grind a little bit before you're going to get to the point where you're making decisions about your own career.
Right. Right. No, that's
Be
real.
willing to
That's real.
move, be willing to
Mm-hmm.
move, be willing to
Mm-hmm.
relocate, be willing to,
Mm-hmm.
put in the time to move up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump back into the history. So you were a specialist for 8 years, and
Uh,
then
kind of like, I mean, it
okay,
ebbed and flowed a little bit. Stryker acquired Mako back in
okay,
2013. Um, I started in Seattle. I actually relocated to Northern California prior to the acquisition due to just some personnel changes and the amount of volume coming from Northern California. We couldn't just put somebody new here in
right,
terms of who was covering. So I had already relocated to Northern California when Stryker acquired Mako. For me, that was a big culture change from Mako into Stryker. For me, it was fine. I still have great relationships with all my Stryker counterparts. I fit in. I fit into the
fantastic,
bro culture. I fit into the polo
bro.
shirt, bench press, weight room culture, and I love it. I love these guys, specifically Northern California. Like, I mean, I absolutely love these guys and love working with
Sure,
them.
absolutely.
So, but not everybody did, right? So it was an interesting dynamic shift with the culture between Mako and Stryker, and as it absorbed it. But for me, what that meant is it kind of like there was two silos. When Stryker acquires people, they just kind of like bring them in and then figure out how the organization is going to work after. And for us, there was a separate Mako silo essentially. But I worked very collaboratively with my Northern California counterparts, and so I got absorbed in quickly because we didn't want to risk any losing me and me losing them, and any sort of disconnect. So I got absorbed in, so I became a rep essentially on paper, still managing the Mako, but
Got it.
like also learning about the joint replacement side of the business manually, because at this point I had no exposure to it. Right. My first ever joint I put in was robotic, which says a lot.
Right.
But I went back and forth working closely with my Stryker counterparts, and then I took a manager position, which was technically reporting back into the Mako side of the business, and I use that term loosely, right, because it just kind of went back and forth a little bit. But that was what was important for me to be having communication from the robotics division, and then communicating that and working collaboratively with my management team here. So I went back and forth between a clinical specialist, then a rep, and then a manager with direct reports that were clinically responsible for the robotic
Wow, you
clinical
had such
application.
a dynamic experience. I mean, you were a lot doing a lot of different roles. It
Yeah.
makes sense how it led you to leadership position that you're in today. And talk to us a little bit about that. You've gotten to see a lot of the progression of what it means to be a medical sales rep, how you're assisting the surgeons with devices like a robot. You know, and I was talking to this with someone just the other day. There's always been this impression that as we continue, especially after COVID, there's going to be a necessity for less reps. Like they're just not going to be needed. I remember 20 years ago they were saying that the reps were done by 2000, and then I heard that in the 80s and 90s they were saying, oh, reps are going to be done in the next 5 years. Reps are still around, and if anything, the industry's grown. What do you think is going to happen though, from your position and all that you can see? Maybe over the next 10 years, what do you think is going to happen as far as the role of a medical device sales rep?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we started to see it pre-COVID, and I think COVID really amplified the fact that we need to be less open to having entirely too many people in an
Sure.
operating room, and that comes from a surgeon site visit to all the way down to like new reps training and going up. I think what's closer to being gone are the days of like senior rep expert selling, junior rep box opener covering, without some sort of like it almost reminds me of the Wizard of Oz, where you have somebody that's manning computer screens from a remote proctoring standpoint, of like, who's the person who, fine, maybe you do have a junior rep or a new person who doesn't know as much, but they have continuous access to somebody who can pipe into their room. So maybe that person who is the expert isn't driving 2,500 miles a month, grinding, getting
Right.
to all the ORs for the 10 minutes that they really need to be in there,
Right.
to help the case go well. And I think that we're there in the technology allowing it, with your proximity, your avail,
Right.
your, rods and cones, your Amex AMA expert eye, there's all these different companies that are doing all of these things that like are allowing exposure to that. I believe that's where it's headed, right? Because what's happening is you can't plug 20 years worth of experience into that new rep in 6 months and expect them to be ready to go and answer any surgeon's question and get there. But you also don't need that 20 years in a basic straightforward joint case, right? You need that in your hinge case where you're past your learning. So I feel like a combination of technology integration plus incentivizing the elder reps, if you will, and I include myself in that, so nobody take offense. Like incentivizing your elder reps to be more available via a call schedule or whatever it is to help get people through as that eye in the sky.
So you just see the future is going to bring, maybe the number of reps will remain the same, but they're going to have that much more support and this diverse array of support to make sure these things happen successfully as far as the cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're still in a weird spot with the hospital pushback on people, but also their pushback in becoming fluent in things, right? Like, okay, we've set you up to be successful, all the implants are there, you don't want us here anymore. I still think you're going to have that, and this is nothing against circulating nurses, nothing against, because some of the hospitals are so short staffed that they have travelers, maybe they
Right.
don't know the
Right.
hospital they're in. The
Right.
dynamic there from a staffing perspective is like nobody wants to own that liability of something getting open. That's why I don't think the reps are gone. I think we do have the ability to not need the person A in the room anymore.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. So, one thing I want to know from you, we have a couple of different people that listen to this podcast. We have people that want to enter the industry. We have people that are currently in the industry, and we have people that are leading the way, like yourself. What's one word of advice you'd give to those that want to enter the industry and speak specifically to your field, which is medical device sales, robotics, augmented reality? You're doing all the cool stuff. What's one thing that you would say to anyone that hears this and is really thinking about the field? What's a piece of advice you'd give them?
Just be willing to research anything and everything. I am constantly, there are so many learning pathways, and every day I still take some time to learn about what's new, learn about what's coming out there. People who are younger today have grown up with a lot of technology that's been in their face. Be fluent in that. I know I don't want to say everybody go out and play video games all the time, but like I joke that my 6-year-old has been using a virtual reality headset since he was 5, right? Like,
Right.
and that
Right.
piece is important. Like stay versatile in your education, both in medical procedures, medical knowledge. It'll surprise you. I never in a million years thought I'd be doing any sort of engineering, and I will not tell you that I'm an engineer. Like I am not an engineer, but troubleshooting robots and technology as it goes into surgery has been something that's become a huge passion for me. And so I would say just don't close any of the doors. If something piques your interest in the medical field, in the medical device space, chances are you can find a way in.
Love it. Got it. And for those that are trying to excel their careers or thinking about their next 5 years, maybe even leadership, what would you advise them?
Say don't settle. It's easy. At least I've seen there's a lot of unknowns in the world right now. Um, it's easy to maybe collect a paycheck and sit somewhere that doesn't feel right for you. The growth happens in the uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it feels a little uncomfortable, where you're stretching and starting to grow and starting to hit those edges. And that's where the
Mm-hmm.
growth happens. That's where you're like, wow, had I not done this, had I not taken this chance, like it. So take the leap, take the interview, take the conversation with somebody. we all get contacted a lot by recruiters and by stuff like that, but there's some of them that are really, really have an opportunity that could be the right fit for you. Or if somebody's reaching out, like take the call, take the interview, take the chance, and you'll thank yourself for it. Your later self will.
I love it. And then last question, you know, there are all these resources out there. You know, our company has them too. You know, and what we've seen is that these positions have become so competitive. Even succeeding in your role has become really competitive. And sometimes the company you work for, because they're prioritizing whatever they're prioritizing, people might not be getting the training they really want. And then, of course, people that want to get into the industry, they're not able to just understand all that's required to get the position they want. What is your take on programs like ours that actually help you get in the industry and help you perform within the industry?
Yeah, I would say it's really important. I've definitely referred a couple people where I, as somebody who's in the industry, maybe can't help, right? I don't know much about pharma. I know I could probably find somebody that's in pharma and, like message them on somebody's behalf and introduce them, and that does work. But it's so nice that there's something that is organized and is actually a pathway to success from somebody who's looking to get in, versus just a like plug and play. Okay, fine, we'll work on your resume and then good luck. Or and you allow opportunities for even somebody like myself. Like, I'm somebody who is completely underutilized LinkedIn. I'm definitely somebody who is going to put that on a bullet point for me. And and just understand that coaching is not what it used to be. Coaching is learning on your own time. And that's something that I've made it a priority in my life to continue to reach out and be constantly striving for success, so that you don't get stagnant, both in your resume, your career, your knowledge of anything in life. You can constantly get in better. So I think that these resources being available for new people and existing people is huge.
All right, Valerie, are you ready? This was great. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us and the audience. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Oh, all right. Yeah, hit me with the lightning round. Let's do it.
All right. You're going to get 4 questions, and your goal is to answer them within 10 seconds.
Oh,
all right. First question. Best book you've read in the last 6 months?
I reread Go Giver, and I really like that book. That book, it's
classic.
Yeah, Go Giver.
That's a classic. That no more needs to be said. And for anybody listening, if you haven't read it, you better go read it. Simple as that. Best movie you've seen in the last 6 months?
Oh, geez. I'm really bad about movies because I have 2 speeds: go and asleep. I'm really bad about this one. I'm gonna get timed out on this one. I don't think I've watched a movie that I haven't fallen asleep.
Okay, TV show.
Is it bad that I don't really watch TV?
No, this is good. Look, you're focused. If you got downtime, you're reading, or you're doing something active, or you're sleeping.
I'm usually a podcaster. Like, I'm usually that. So like, I have to pick a kids movie, because that's probably the only thing that's been on in the background, because I have 2 kids. So I apologize. Like, I'm gonna be bad about the movie one.
All right. You know what though? That's gonna you helped me add a new question to my arsenal,
Okay.
and the question is best podcast you've listened to in the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's I do have to give a shout out to Jules on your podcast, because I learned a lot more about a colleague that I didn't even know, and it was great to get to know her a little bit more.
Awesome.
But I listened to my trainer, which is the Boom Performance podcast, and then Andy Frisella, and I just did 75 hard, so I'm kind of on a kick there.
Oh man, I jump in and out of 75 hard, so I think I actually haven't gone the full 75 days. So
come on, man.
I'm gonna be challenging myself again, but yeah. I love getting into that. It works. All right, and then last 2 questions. Best meal you've had in 6 months?
Yeah, I actually went down to we were in Seattle, I should say we were in Seattle, and we actually just got some amazing sushi with friends. We're sitting on a patio, like overlooking the Lake Washington, and it was just like the right vibes. Usually a sushi person.
Love it. And then the best experience you've had in the last 6 months?
Best experience. Oh man. I mean, let's think. I just probably anything with my kids. One thing that's super random, but I've been coaching hockey with my older son. He's 6, and I use the term loosely, coaching, because they're young at that age and it's fun, but it's just ice skating and being around the ice and sticks and hockey and all of that. And honestly, it is the most freeing time. And as a medical device person and as just a high energy person who's doing a lot anyway, I have to put my phone down and just ice skate and get to do that. And so it may sound simple or cheesy to some people, but like they look at me like I'm crazy because I'm just like have this like ear to ear grin every night I'm on the ice, and it's so fun. So that's probably cheesy, but it's me. It's real.
I'm actually curious, when you're not working and not with the kids, what fun things are you doing with your free time?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm with the kids a lot, right? So it's a balance. You know, Jules referenced a balancing act between the kids with her husband, and that resonated with me big time because my husband's also military and works in it, and so we have a balancing act as well. So I would say, you know, obviously ice skating, I'm pretty active. You know, if I turned my camera around, you know, I know I'm not on camera on the podcast, but if I turn it around, you'd see my gym and my Peloton treadmill and my Peloton, like, so pretty much active, being outside, getting to the mountains, right? It's pretty easy for us to jump over to Tahoe or to Truckee and be in the mountains. So, and then we have a little camper. And so just getting outside, making sure you're enjoying it.
Excellent. Well, Valerie, it was wonderful having you on the show. Again, thank you for sharing your experience with us. We look forward to hearing more from you. And again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And that was Valerie Davis, taking us into the world of augmented reality and orthopedics. Fascinating stuff. Some of you might have been listening to this episode and thinking to yourselves, now this is the kind of career I want to have. Well, don't wonder, don't wish, don't hope. Take action and go to evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, fill out our application, and let's have a conversation and get you into one of these positions. These types of careers are meant to be lived. You know, one of the reasons why we do these episodes is because you want to show the world what medical sales really means. What lifestyles are people having? What careers are people enjoying? What technology are people getting in front of? What impact are people making? And one thing that's very important to us is helping all of our listeners experience this if they so desire. So make it easy for yourself. And if you're someone that's looking to get into the industry or looking to make a transition, visit evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, fill out that application, and have a conversation with someone from the team. As always, we do our best to bring you innovative guests that are doing things a little differently, setting the example, trailblazing, pioneering, experiencing things that we can only dream of. And this is what we do here at the Medical Sales Podcast. So make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.